For North Americans who celebrate Thanksgiving, you sit around the table and you basically, this is the past sitting around the table. Some people dreading it. Christmas too. Oh no, not because you're facing the living past. So it's a miraculous thing and again, one could say that is the real meaning of forgiveness. It's not so much a mental act, mental acrobatics. They'd say, okay, you've done dreadful things, but I'm so spiritual that I forgive you. I forgive you. At least I'm trying to. At least I'm trying. You're not even trying. Why do I always have to be the first? It's always the same. You're lost again. So, forgive you is not so much a mental, to formulate certain things in your mind and then trying to live up to a certain thought in your mind, which is very difficult, if not impossible. But the real forgiveness is to enter that state of presence so that you're not a personality that's conditioned by the past, and then you can meet the person, even the person who did something to you, if you choose to meet them. You don't have to meet a person who did bad things to you, but the question is, does that person still exist in you as a mind form, as a thought form, or a mental emotional entity? Does this person who did bad things to you still live in you? Even they might even have passed away already, but they live in you as a mental emotional entity that you carry. It's actually like a little gremlin that lives in you, and it's not pleasant. And so forgiveness means to recognize that for what it is. It's not really the other person anymore. The person maybe passed away 10 years ago. It's not the other person anymore. It's something you carry still in your mental emotional field. It lives there. And so that is, again, something to recognize. And if you recognize it as something that lives in your mental emotional field, then it's much easier to step back from it and by no longer getting drawn into it. So that's something to do with something that lives in you, and you recognize it as something that you no longer want or need, and then it gradually dissolves as you're no longer reacting against it. So you have a split in you. As long as it's there, there's that mental formation, mental emotional entity, and then there's another pattern in their mind that reacts against it. It's a bit crazy. But forgiveness then is really meeting the other, if the other is still there, and you're actually now meeting them in person without reference to the past. People with whom you have a grievance, people carry grievances, and they actually like their grievance. The ego loves grievances. People that 20 years ago, he did that to me. 30 years ago. Dreadful thing he did to me. Oh, God. The ego loves grievances, but as long as you carry even one grievance towards, and grievance is a long-standing resentment. Resentment could be short-lived, but grievance tends to be a very, very long thing, goes on and on. At least that's how I define it. The grievance goes on, and you carry it in your mind. And even just one surviving grievance in you can often prevent you from fully accessing presence, from actually fully awakening. It's a dark spot in you that prevents consciousness from arising fully. So you have to be really very careful that see what they do to you and see that the addiction to a grievance is only what is addicted is your false. The personality derives, the egoic personality, the ego derives sustenance from the grievance and strength from the grievance. So if you harbor a grievance, that means that the egoic self is still operating. It is not you who is harboring the grievance, it's the ego in you that is harboring the grievance. So if you have a surviving grievance in you towards another person, you need to know that ultimately it's not you, it's the ego, it's still operating. So you can develop in other areas of your life, and the ego can remain in you, even can it attach itself. Let's say you're awakening beautifully, but there's one corner in your mind where the ego survives because it has attached itself to a grievance. And there can be other corners too where the ego can attach itself to particular anything to do with the past. It attaches itself to a particular thing in your mind, and there it's waiting. And occasionally it can then, even in other situations, the ego can still come back more easily because it's there. It's still feeding on the grievance. So it's not starving. It's still feeding on this grievance that you harbor. So ultimately, forgiveness is to realize that the dimension in you, which is the deeper half. If remember, you're the two halves. You're the personality, the person, and you're the unconditioned, the deep I. So that deep, when you by being the deeper half, the deep I, nothing ever was done to that deep I. Perhaps something was done for the deep I to be obscured completely, but the deep I in itself is beyond anything that could be done to it. Nobody can injure it. That is untouchable. It is invulnerable. It is the formless dimension in you. Once you can sense that in yourself, forgiveness becomes very easy, because not only are you present when you sense that in yourself, but also you are connected with a dimension in which nothing ever happened to you. Nothing ever happened at this deepest dimension. And then the forgiveness happens almost automatically, because nothing ever happened to who you are in the essence of your being. And that's an amazing realization. And it's not something that you arrive at through thinking or through some mental act of forgiveness, as if forgiveness was something that you could do. You can't really do forgiveness. The true forgiveness arises spontaneously from the essence of who you are. And that includes forgiveness of yourself. If in the past, this is a question I'm often asked, people carry a sense of guilt around, and that is very similar to the grievance. That again is guilt, is like grievance. It is a mental, emotional entity that you carry within you, and you need to know that's what it is. And forgiveness to yourself for something that you did in the past and you now recognize as bad, in whatever way, as immoral, as you recognize, because now you're much more conscious than you were when you did that, but you still may carry this deep sense of guilt. And how do you get rid of that? First, you need to observe that this lives in you as a mental, emotional energy field. And as long as you identify with it, it becomes part of your ego. The ego is form identity. The ego would prefer to have something great to identify with, but it will readily also identify with something bad. And then you have a conceptual identity of yourself as a person who is bad. I'm a bad person because I did that. Conceptual sense of self, conceptual reality again arises. And that does not help anybody. It causes you to be stuck in ego and unconsciousness. So again here, guilt dissolves. Guilt involves forgiveness of yourself. Again, it's not something you can do. It's something that arises when you go deep enough so that you realize the essence of who you are. And you, of course, as you know, you realize it beyond conceptualization. The essence of who you are is presence, conscious presence, alert, stillness, awareness.